So the UK government is moving forward with a very controversial national digital ID. And on the surface, that sounds pretty reasonable, right? Like another login, maybe another verification system. But they're saying that your ability to work, to earn a living, could be tied to that ID, which is insane. So I want to paint what this actually looks like. You apply for a job, you have a solid resume, you feel super good about the interview. The employer goes to verify your digital ID, but there's a flag in the system. It'd be a mistake. Maybe it's something you said online. Maybe you just didn't update something correctly, but either way, the system says no. And suddenly you are not unemployable because you lack skills. You're unemployable because you lack permission. And that's not some hypothetical future. Just last week in Vietnam, millions lost their bank accounts and they were frozen in a single government action. So I want you to imagine that you're a small business owner there. You go to bed Tuesday night, everything's good, normal. Wednesday morning comes around and your account is frozen. Your suppliers need payment, your employees, they certainly need their wages. And you try calling the bank, of course, no one wants to talk. And there's no appeal process that moves fast enough to actually matter in that situation. You're just locked out of your own money. So this past week, I started to ask a different question, not what happens if this happens to me, but more of what does security look like even if income itself becomes conditional. And that really led me somewhere that I wasn't expecting. It really led me back to the basic foundation of what wealth actually is and how most of us have been measuring it wrong our entire life. But before you say, okay, Janice, you're getting extreme, that's never going to happen. It actually already is, but we don't realize it. Freelancers are getting deplatformed and losing income overnight. PayPal has been known for freezing accounts with 5-6 figures in them, no explanation. Banks are closing accounts for customers who say the wrong thing online. You have gig workers who are getting deactivated by an algorithm, and there's a little human review, if any. This isn't just like some future scenario. This is a problem that we're seeing on a Thursday afternoon in 2025. We just actually haven't named that pattern, but income itself is becoming conditional. Access is becoming conditional, and the conditions are being set by systems that you do not control. So if income is not security, then what is? I want to walk you through something that I've been digesting this past week, and it's changing how I see money, because most of us use the word money to mean everything. Our paycheck, savings, the number in our bank account, but that is not money. That is currency. And the difference between the two, money and currency, matters more than you think. I want you to think of wealth like a 4-layer pyramid. Most people live their entire lives on just the top layer without realizing that there are 3 other layers underneath that are more stable. So the top layer being currency, it's the most fragile. This is where most of us keep everything. That's our bank accounts, our debit cards, payment accounts, Venmo, Cash App. It's fast, it's convenient, and it's the first thing that gets cut off when systems break. So currency is not value. It is a claim on value. It's a ticket, and it only works if the system beneath it honors it. So let's take the US dollar, for instance. It has lost over 90% of its purchasing power in the last 100 years. What a dollar could buy in 1925 now takes more than 10 to buy today. Currency is useful. I'm not anti-currency, but it is the least reliable place to store your security because it can be frozen, inflated, surveilled, denied, and you have no say in that. Let's click down into money, the next layer of the pyramid. It's scarce, it's real, and this is what people used before modern banking. Gold, silver, tangible assets, they held value on their own. You couldn't print more of it, you couldn't freeze it remotely, and it was scarce, it was durable, it was recognized everywhere. And most of us don't use money in this sense anymore. We use currency, but understanding the difference helps you see why one is fragile and why the other one isn't. So I want you to think of it this way. Currency is a claim ticket, but money is the thing that the ticket represents. And when the system breaks down, this ticket stops working. It's not honored. But the thing itself, that is what actually has value. So let's go to the next layer, which is productivity. This is actually my favorite. Productivity is your labor amplified by tools, systems, or structures. It's the difference between digging with your hands versus digging with a tractor. So let's kind of look at a real before and after just so you can kind of feel this. I hate laundry, but we're gonna take laundry. You can do it by hand. Washing clothes takes hours and it destroys your hands and your back. With a washing machine, it takes 10 minutes of your attention. That is productivity. It is the same task with 90% less labor. Now, apply that to income. One person with a lawnmower can do maybe 5 yards a day, and another person with a ride-on mower, a trailer, and even a helper, they could do 25 yards in a day. Same hours, but it's 5 times the output. That is not about working harder. It's about your leverage. A greenhouse, it can multiply what a gardener can grow beyond bare soil or true natural weather. A carpenter with power tools, they can finish in days what used to take months. Or a coder who has a good framework, they can ship products in weeks instead of in months or years. This is the layer where wealth actually starts to build, because productivity creates surplus. It's more than you consume. And that surplus is what you can use to store, to trade, and reinvest. You cannot work your way to surplus on labor alone. You cannot grit your way there. You need productivity. You need leverage. You need tools and systems that multiply what 1 hour of your time produces. So finally, let's go to the base, the foundation. It is labor. This is you. This is your time, this is your skill, this is your hands, the sweat of your brow. It's the only thing that can always be brought to the table, even if every account gets frozen. Labor is what turns disorder into order. It's the wood into furniture, it's ingredients into meals, it's textiles into decor. And so I think of it this way: if God were to make you Adam, you're the first man on earth, labor is what stands between you and the command to subdue the earth. It's the foundation, it's what you bring when you have nothing else. So I want you to imagine someone loses their corporate job overnight. We're seeing this more often. And maybe they know carpentry. Maybe their dad taught them when they were growing up reluctantly. Within a week, they could be fixing decks, building shelves. They could be doing small repairs for people in the neighborhood. Some may pay with cash, some may barter if they're open to it. Some may trade car repairs for a custom bookshelf, but their bank account doesn't matter. It's their hands. That's labor. That is the base foundation of the pyramid in reality. There's no boss, there's no paycheck, there's no bank account needed. And that's what labor looks like when it is not wrapped in salary, when it's not denominated in currency. If everything else collapses, this is what you fall back on. It is the base layer that no one can take away from you. So what I realized is, in a normal world, money flows like this. You trade labor for income, income becomes currency, currency sits in savings and investments, and you hope that the system keeps working. That's pretty much all of our retirement stories. But in a world where income isn't guaranteed, you reverse that. You shorten the loop. Income still comes in, but instead of letting it pile into currency, you want to convert it as fast as possible into the layers below, into ownership, into production, into things that you control. The bank becomes more of a transit station versus a vault, and money comes in and it moves quickly into tools, skills, systems, assets, things that keep producing whether or not the system approves of it or not. So we're going to do a test. I want you to actually do it with me right now. We're going to imagine that it's 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. You wake up and every single account you have, your checking, your savings, your PayPal, your Venmo, your brokerage, everything is frozen. You don't know why. You cannot reach anyone who can fix it. And I want you to ask yourself, what could you produce by 9 p.m. that day? So let's break it down. What's in your fridge? Could you eat for a week or two without going to a store? Or are you 2 days from hunger? What tools do you actually own today? Could you use them? Can you fix something, build something? Or can you help a neighbor with a real problem? Or would you just be standing there with nothing useful to offer your family or your neighborhood? What skills do you have? If someone in your neighborhood needed, say, childcare, web design, a haircut, plumbing, electricity, repair, do you have something to trade that doesn't require a Stripe account or a W-2? I want you to be honest, because most people score 0 on this test, and I don't think that's your fault. The system taught us to optimize for paychecks and not production. We were told to specialize, to outsource everything to someone else, and to let the experts handle it. But now you do know. Now you hopefully can see the gap, and that means that you can actually start to close it. If the answer to the 9 a.m. question is nothing, then you are way too high up on that pyramid. You're living entirely in currency, which means that you are entirely dependent on the system's permission to survive. But if the answer is, I could maybe grow some food. In fact, I have some. Repair something, I could build something, maybe trade a skill to help someone. That's real security. That is wealth that does not need approval. Let's be very clear. Living without income does not mean living without producing value. It just means that your survival isn't dependent on a paycheck that has to clear every 2 weeks. You're producing value directly and exchanging it directly, or you've built systems that produce value for you while you sleep. The key here is that you are not trying to replace a $60,000 salary. You are trying to meet your actual needs. Your food, your shelter, utilities, your transportation, by trading what you can do for what people actually need done. You need both of those. So let's look at the production model. This is where someone is creating something that has ongoing value and you own the means of production. Let's take someone with maybe a couple of acres who turned their backyard into serious food production. And I'm not talking a hobby gardening. I'm talking like real substantial yields: tomatoes, beans, squash, greens, herbs, strawberries, potatoes, like real stuff. And they can grow more than their family can eat. So they sell some in a farm stand in their driveway. They trade with some neighbors. They preserve some with canning, freezing, freeze drying, dehydrating. Their grocery bill would drop from, say, $800 a month to under $200. That is $600 a month that they don't need income to cover. In a world where traditional income gets cut, that garden keeps them fed without touching savings. That garden is a production base. It generates value whether they have job and incomes or not. The point is, you want to own something that transforms raw materials into finished value people want. A garden turns seeds into food. A workshop turns lumber into furniture. A kitchen turns ingredients into real preserved goods. You control the inputs and you control the outputs. On a final note, I would say this is not about going back to a full barter system. It's about having options. It's about knowing that if the formal system glitches or falls through, you have other ways to create and exchange value. I want you to start small. I want you to help a neighbor do something, and don't charge them, just build the relationship. Because when systems break, the people who make it through are the ones who are useful to people around them. And you might be saying, okay, this sounds like prepping, and it kind of is, I'm not going to lie, but 100 years ago, this was not an extreme way to live or see the world around you. This was very normal. People owned their homes outright. They grew some of their food. They had skills that actually mattered in the community. They knew their neighbors by name, and they didn't need permission to survive. But somewhere along the way, we outsourced all of it, and we called it social progress. We specialized so much that we became helpless outside of our one narrow lane in occupation. And we built our entire lives on top of systems that we don't control, systems that can change the rules, freeze accounts, or just simply stop working. And I'm not saying that we need to go backward. I do like progress. I'm not saying we should reject modernity. I'm saying that we do need to bring that foundation forward into our modern lives. We want to keep the convenience where it makes sense, but we don't want to let convenience become dependency, which is where we are today. We don't want to let efficiency become fragility. The incomeless future isn't a conspiracy theory. It is a direction of travel. The UK digital ID is just one example. AI automation is another. Frozen bank accounts in other countries, yet another. Deplatforming. You're going to see this again and again, where income is becoming conditional. And the people who see this early and they can build accordingly, they are the ones who will be stable while everyone else is trying to kind of find their footing. I want you to run that 9 a.m. test, and then I want you to pick one thing, just one, that you're going to do to move on in the next 90 days. Maybe it's paying an extra $500 toward your mortgage, or maybe it's learning to grow something edible. But just pick that one thing, and you're going to start to move down that pyramid we talked about. One thing that makes you less dependent on the system's permission. And then drop a comment and tell me what it is. I will tell you first, I'm working on being free of grocery stores by 2030. I hope this video was helpful for you, and I cannot wait to hear what you're going to try next.